The crowd stood frozen as the German Shepherd suddenly lunged forward, barking frantically at a pregnant woman standing near the airport entrance. Clutching her belly tightly, she pleaded, "Please, make him stop." Security personnel quickly rushed to the scene. Passengers gasped, and a wave of panic spread through the terminal. "Ma'am, remain where you are," Officer Mark shouted as he struggled to control his K-9 partner Rex. The woman's complexion drained of color. "What's going on? Why is he barking at me? I haven't done anything wrong." Yet Rex didn't relent. His barking grew louder and more urgent, desperate and frantic, as if he had just detected something terrifying. Moments later, when the startling truth finally came to light, it stunned everyone. Because what Rex had uncovered wasn't a threat at all. Instead, it was a heart-stopping scam, one that no human eye could have revealed. What lay concealed beneath that serene smile would transform airport security forever. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit like, share this video, and subscribe. I'm also genuinely curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments below. It's always fascinating to see how far our stories travel. The airport hummed with the rhythm of everyday life, heels clicking, conveyor belts whirring in the distance, and calm conversations among travelers prepping to board. Morning sunlight poured in through expansive glass walls, glittering across polished floors and reflecting off endless rows of luggage carts. Officer Mark Henderson adjusted his cap and surveyed the busy terminal with practiced eyes. For most, it was just another typical day. But for Mark, each moment in uniform demanded alertness, knowing that danger often lurked behind the most unsuspecting faces. Beside him trotted his faithful canine companion, Rex, a large German Shepherd with sharp amber eyes and a composed demeanor that drew attention wherever he went. Rex's tail wagged in a steady rhythm as he moved, every sense heightened and attuned to the flow of the crowd. To Mark, Rex was far more than just a working dog. He was like family. Their partnership spanned 4 years, strengthened through late-night raids, bomb threats, and countless hours of quiet understanding. Mark crouched for a moment, gently stroking Rex's neck. "Easy, boy. Just another routine patrol," he whispered. The dog's ears flicked, seemingly receptive to his handler's calming words. Around them, travelers wheeled their suitcases, children's laughter filled the air, and an announcement echoed overhead regarding a delayed flight to New York. The atmosphere was calm, almost serene, yet Mark knew that peace rarely endured long in places like this. Suddenly, Rex halted mid-step, his nose twitching. Mark noticed the pause but dismissed it. Airports were filled with a multitude of scents. Still, a slight uneasiness crept in. A feeling he had come to trust whenever Rex signaled something amiss. They had saved lives before relying on those instincts. Rising to his feet, Mark scanned the surroundings, families checking tickets, tourists taking selfies, business people clutching coffee. Everything seemed normal, at least on the surface. Rex's stance stiffened once more, his head tilting toward the far end of the terminal where passengers from the last flight were entering. Mark frowned. "What is it, partner?" he murmured. Rex responded with a low grunt, eyes narrowing sharply. Then, just as suddenly as the tension had risen, Rex relaxed, flicking his tail once. Mark exhaled and chuckled quietly. "You're keeping me on my toes, huh?" He had no idea what was to come. In the span of mere minutes, that calm and uneventful morning would spiral into utter turmoil. Rex's forthcoming action wouldn't merely halt the bustling crowd, it would unveil a secret that nobody in the terminal was prepared to confront. Mark glanced down at his watch, 9:47 a.m. The busiest hour had commenced. Crowds of travelers surged past the security checkpoints like relentless waves, their chatter merging into a continuous drone. Beside him, Rex strolled with measured calm, his nose lowered as he sniffed the air with meticulous attention. The K-9's unwavering discipline always left a strong impression on Mark. Regardless of how noisy or chaotic the surroundings became, Rex maintained his concentration. Suddenly, amid the flurry of motion, something changed. A woman stepped through the glass doors, her arrival strikingly unusual. She was tall, her light hair flowing gently over a navy blue coat, paired with dark jeans that fitted snugly, and a white blouse stretched over a heavily pregnant stomach. She held a brown shopping bag in each hand, the crisp paper rustling softly with every step. Though sunglasses masked her eyes, her lips were tightly pressed together, as if she were holding back a breath. Mark found his gaze following her almost involuntarily. There was something in her bearing that didn't align with the easy flow of the crowd. While most people glanced around, checked their devices, or hurried toward check-in counters, she moved in a different manner. Slow, purposeful, almost rehearsed. Rex noticed it as well. His head lifted. His nostrils flared once, then again. His body suddenly tensed. Mark halted in his tracks. "Easy, Rex," he whispered, gently pulling on the leash. But the dog remained immobile, ears pricked forward and eyes locked onto the woman, as if tuned to a frequency only he could detect. The woman approached the security checkpoint, nervously adjusting her coat. Mark noticed a slight tremor in her hands, which immediately caught his attention. A flicker of suspicion settled deep in his gut. "You sense something, buddy," he whispered. Rex responded with a soft, restrained growl, low but unmistakable. Mark's pulse quickened. Years of experience on the force had taught him that Rex never reacted without cause. Whether detecting explosives, drugs, or other threats, the dog's instincts were razor sharp. Yet something about this situation felt different. The woman appeared harmless, even vulnerable. As she handed her boarding pass to the gate officer, Rex suddenly barked sharply. All eyes turned instantly. The woman froze mid-motion, her complexion draining of color. She gripped her bags tightly, her knuckles turning white. Passengers exchanged murmurs, looking back and forth between her and the restless canine. An atmosphere of curiosity and tension thickened the air. A chill crept up Mark's spine. Something was undeniably wrong. He could feel it in his bones. Holding Rex steady, he kept his gaze locked on the woman. "All right, ma'am," he muttered quietly. "Who exactly are you?" In that moment, the previously calm order within the airport began to fracture, and Rex was ready to demonstrate why no secret could remain hidden from him. The terminal's atmosphere shifted abruptly. Rex's bark shattered the silence like breaking glass, sharp, commanding, and loud. Heads snapped toward them. Conversations abruptly ceased mid-word. The reverberation of his growl echoed through the hall, bouncing off the steel columns and glass walls. "Rex, heel," Mark ordered firmly but calmly. However, the dog refused to comply. Rex sprang forward, his muscles taut and eyes flashing with fierce determination. The leash stretched tight in Mark's hand, causing his boots to slip slightly on the gleaming floor. Passengers gasped in alarm, stumbling backward while clutching their luggage and children tightly. As the barking intensified, the pregnant woman stood frozen. "Please, make him stop," she pleaded, her voice quivering. Her shopping bags rustled while she instinctively stepped back, one hand pressed protectively against her abdomen and the other raised in a defensive gesture. Under the harsh airport lighting, her complexion turned ghostly pale. Mark's heartbeat thundered in his ears. He had witnessed Rex in chase mode during bomb detection and risky raids, but never quite like this. The dog's barking carried a desperation, an urgent plea that didn't match typical signs of aggression or alertness. It was as if Rex was trying to warn them, urgently demanding they notice something invisible, unable to move away from the gate. Another officer shouted as he approached the commotion. Two security personnel quickly advanced with outstretched hands, attempting to calm the crowd that was now retreating toward the check-in counters. The woman shook her head forcefully. "I haven't done anything wrong," she insisted, her voice cracking. "Please, I just want to catch my flight." Tears brimmed in her eyes while Rex kept barking, his claws scraping the floor, and his gaze fixed unwaveringly on her. Mark tightened his hold on the leash. "Rex, calm down," he said softly. Crouching and carefully observing the woman's movements, her bags, and her stance, he observed how she gripped her abdomen a bit too firmly, as if protecting some secret. Then, a subtle metallic jingling sounded when one of the shopping bags brushed against her knee. Something clicked inside his mind. He signaled to his fellow officer. "We need to search her," he said sharply. "Immediately." The woman took a step back, panic flashing across her features. "No, you can't. I'm pregnant," she exclaimed, turning as if to run away. Rex barked once more, louder and more intense. This time it was more than just a warning. He growled deeply, pulling on the leash so forcefully that it slipped slightly from Mark's grasp. The dog lunged forward but stopped just short of the woman. His nose hovered close to the air around her stomach. His whole body trembled with fierce energy. Passengers gasped, and a baby's cry echoed somewhere in the crowd. The atmosphere was thick with tension, nearly suffocating. Mark steadied himself, his heart pounding. Whatever Rex was detecting was far from ordinary. At that moment, Mark made a decision that would alter everything. "Ma'am," he spoke quietly but with firm authority, "you must come with us for secondary screening now." The woman's mouth fell open, stunned. Before she could object, two officers stepped toward her. The once uneasy calm of the airport had shifted into a charged mix of fear, whispers, and doubt. Rex, still growling softly, had triggered a sequence of events no one could have anticipated. Murmurs swelled in the terminal as the officers closed in. The pregnant woman stood frozen beside the metal detector, breathing shallow, her trembling fingers clutching the paper bags as if they were her sole protection. Behind her, fellow passengers began pulling out their phones to record, their whispers spreading swiftly through the hall like wildfire. Officer Mark stepped forward, maintaining a calm yet authoritative tone. "Ma'am, I need you to remain still," he instructed, his hand tightening firmly on Rex's leash. The German shepherd's hackles rose as he fixed his steady gaze on the woman's midsection. Each growl emanating from him grew more urgent, not aggressive, but clearly a warning. "I told you. I haven't done anything wrong," she cried, panic creeping into her voice. "He's frightening me." Her eyes flicked anxiously around, searching the swelling crowd for a glimpse of sympathy. "I'm pregnant. Can't you see that?" Mark's jaw clenched tightly. He had encountered genuine fear before, but something felt off about hers. Too composed, too deliberate. Still, protocol called for caution. "We understand, ma'am," he replied evenly. "For your safety and the safety of everyone here, we need to perform a quick screening." Nearby, Officers Daniels and Perez moved forward to assist. Daniels spoke softly, trying to soothe her nerves. "We just need to run a check, all right? It'll only take a moment." The woman hesitated, her knuckles tightening around a couple of paper bags. One of the bags was slightly crumpled, revealing a glimpse of silver foil poking through the tear. Mark's sharp eyes caught the detail immediately, causing his heartbeat to quicken. "Wait," he said firmly. "What's in the bag?" "Just baby things," she hurried to reply. "Diapers, bottles. Please, you're embarrassing me." Before Mark could say anything further, Rex barked sharply once more. A solitary, deep blast shattered the ambient noise. The woman jolted sharply, nearly dropping her bag in the process. That was the moment. Mark's instincts blared louder than the surrounding crowd. "Daniels, escort her to secondary screening immediately." The officers acted without hesitation. One gently grasped her arm, while another reached for her belongings. Fear flashed across the woman's eyes, and for a fleeting instant Mark noticed something else. An emotion not rooted in the dog's presence, but dread of being exposed. Rex's low growl softened into a subdued whine as she was led toward the private security room. Passengers murmured softly and parted to allow them through. Mark exhaled with relief, his heart still racing. "Well done, partner," he murmured, stroking Rex's neck. Yet beneath it all, one question gnawed at him. What exactly had Rex uncovered just now? The crowd slowly dispersed as two uniformed officers guided the pregnant woman away. Her steps were unsteady, her trembling lips repeated, "I haven't done anything wrong." The paper bag in her grip swayed slightly, one handle ripping under her tight hold. Behind her, Rex's growls diminished into low whines that echoed down the terminal corridor. Officer Mark kept a careful distance, his hand firm on the leash, attuned to every tense vibration from his canine companion. "Take it easy, boy," he whispered softly. Still, Rex's posture remained rigid. His ears pricked forward, eyes locked on the retreating woman with the precision of a predator unwilling to lose its focus. The officers ushered her into a small, seldom-used private security room situated just behind the checkpoint, reserved for select situations like this one. Above them, the fluorescent light emitted a constant buzzing sound, bathing the stark white walls in a cold, clinical glow. Nearby, a security scanner stood silently, its green indicator lights pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat. "Please," the woman begged as they guided her to a seat. "I don't understand what's going on. I just want to go home." Her voice trembled, revealing genuine fear, or so it appeared. One of the female officers knelt beside her, speaking softly. "We just need to conduct a quick screening. okay? It's for your own safety as well." Outside, Mark stood behind the glass window, eyes fixed on the scene inside. Rex paced nervously, his tail stiff, eyes alert. Every few seconds, he emitted a low whine and scratched at the door. His restlessness was palpable, and Mark felt it gnawing at his chest. Inside, the woman gently rubbed her abdomen in slow circles, whispering under her breath. Beads of sweat shone on her forehead. "I'm not feeling well," she murmured weakly. "Please, I need to sit down." The officers exchanged uncertain glances. "We'll finish shortly," one promised. Suddenly, Rex gave a sharp, abrupt bark, almost like a warning. Mark's heart skipped a beat. He turned toward the supervising officer, lowering his voice. "Something's wrong," he said quietly. Rex didn't act like this unless, before he could complete the thought, the woman suddenly winced, clutching her stomach. Her breathing grew rapid, and her eyes darted toward the door. Panic, whether genuine or feigned, hung heavily in the air. Mark instinctively stepped forward, his hand tightening on Rex's leash. He didn't know what was coming, but one thing was clear. Rex had sensed danger, and whatever it was drawing nearer. The door to the private screening room clicked closed, confining the woman inside with 2 officers and a female medical screener. Outside, through the observation glass, Mark stood alongside Rex, both watching intently. The atmosphere in the hallway felt oppressive, like the stillness before a storm, Mark thought. "She looks petrified," Officer Perez remarked, folding her arms. "Are you sure this isn't just a false alarm?" Mark didn't divert his gaze from Rex, who was pacing nervously. The German shepherd's tail hung low, muscles stiff, eyes fixed unwaveringly on the glass. "Rex doesn't give false alerts," Mark replied softly. Perez shrugged. "Not once in 4 years. Still, she's pregnant. Did you see how tightly she held her stomach? Maybe he just picked up the scent of medication or something else that startled him." Mark frowned, considering. He's trained to detect over 50 different smells, narcotics, explosives, accelerants, even decaying tissue. Whatever he's sensing is not random. He glanced through the glass again. Inside, the woman slumped in her chair, her breathing heavy as she murmured softly to herself. Her shopping bags lay on the floor, one slightly open, revealing folded baby clothes and a teddy bear. "She seems harmless," the female screener said quietly. "Let's just finish this quickly." They started by inspecting her possessions. Each item was carefully scanned and swabbed. Nothing unusual appeared. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Perez muttered under her breath, "Maybe your dog just had an off morning." Mark's jaw clenched. "He's not wrong," Mark said firmly. "He perceives things beyond our senses. If he's reacting this way, there must be something present," Mark thought. Suddenly, Rex whimpered again, scratching at the door and pressing his nose against the crack at the bottom. Mark knelt down beside him. "What is it, boy?" he murmured. The dog's ears flattened, his body shaking slightly. He emitted a low, frustrated bark, a sound Mark recognized from field work. That bark conveyed distress, urgency, danger. Inside, the woman dabbed her forehead, murmuring that she felt lightheaded. The screener handed her some water, but her trembling hand failed to steady the cup. Her breathing became shallow, and her shoulders tightened. Mark's instincts kicked in. "We need to have medical on standby," he said abruptly. Perez raised an eyebrow. "You think she's pretending?" Mark responded in a quiet tone, "I believe she's concealing something. And Rex senses it." Before Perez could reply, the woman gasped sharply and bent over, clutching her abdomen in pain. Rex barked fiercely, pounding his paw against the door. A chill ran down Mark's spine. "Call medical right now." This wasn't typical pregnancy pain. This was exactly what Rex had been warning them about all along. The woman's scream cut through the silence like a sharp blade. Every officer in the room froze. Her body convulsed forward, hands pressed against her swollen belly, eyes wide with fear. Something was seriously wrong. She gasped, voice trembling. "Oh, God, it hurts. Please help me." The female screener quickly moved to her side, dropping to her knees. "Stay with me, ma'am," she urged. "Try to take slow, steady breaths," she urged, turning to the others. Call medical immediately. Mark was already springing into action. He swung the door open with a push, Rex lunging forward at his side, whining with anxious urgency. The scene that greeted him brought him to an abrupt halt. A woman collapsed in the chair, sweat pouring down her face, trembling uncontrollably. Her breaths came in harsh, uneven gasps, each one shorter than the one before. Perez grabbed the radio. Medical team to gate. Urgent response required. Rex's usual calm demeanor shattered. He barked repeatedly, circling around the woman, his nose twitching wildly. He no longer growled. Instead, his movements grew frantic and protective. Sniffing near her abdomen, he suddenly retreated with a whimper, tail lowered, ears flattened. "Mark," the screener called urgently. "Her pulse is erratic." Mark dropped to his knees beside her. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Through tear-filled eyes, she looked up at him. It's not supposed to happen yet," she whispered, struggling to speak as her voice cracked with every word. 7 months. I still had more time." "What do you mean?" Mark asked, confusion swirling in his mind. "Is it labor?" She shook her head sharply. "No, it's not labor. Something's wrong inside." Her voice weakened into a sob. "Please, save my baby." The door suddenly flew open as 2 paramedics rushed in carrying a stretcher. "Step aside," one ordered. They immediately began assessing her vital signs. "Her blood pressure is dropping rapidly. We need to move her now." As they worked, Rex's whining grew louder. He pawed impatiently at the floor, then dashed toward the woman's bag. His claws scraped against the tile as he nudged it toward Mark, barking insistently. Mark furrowed his brow. "You think there's a connection?" Rex let out a single sharp bark, a firm, unmistakable yes. Hastily, Mark unzipped the bag. "Clothing, baby essentials, nothing out of the ordinary," he said. Yet, underneath the layers, a small glint caught his eye, a tiny metallic patch sewn into the lining, no larger than a coin. Before he could examine it closer, a paramedic shouted, "She's slipping into unconsciousness." They hurriedly lifted the woman onto the stretcher. Her eyes fluttered weakly, lips trembling. "Please, my baby," she murmured faintly. "We've got you," the medic reassured her. "Hang on." As the stretcher rolled away, Rex trailed closely, barking insistently, unsettled by the situation. The corridor erupted in activity. Officers moved aside to clear the path, bewildered passengers watched on, and distant sirens wailed softly. Mark ran alongside, his mind spinning. Whatever was unfolding wasn't just a medical emergency. Rex's behavior confirmed it. Reaching the ambulance doors, Mark glanced down at his canine partner. "What did you find, boy?" he whispered. Rex met his gaze, eyes bright with urgency as if conveying that the true threat was yet undiscovered. Deep down, Mark realized the ordeal was far from over. Outside the terminal in the ambulance bay, flashing lights blurred, voices shouted, and paramedics worked with frantic precision, securing the woman, hooking up IVs, monitoring her faltering pulse. The distant siren's wail echoed against the airport's glass walls, but cutting through the chaos was one sound sharper than all others: Rex's persistent barking. Mark tightened his grip on the leash. "Calm down, boy. She's safe now." Yet Rex remained unsettled. His body shook with intensity, his nose aimed directly at the ambulance, tail rigid as a board. This wasn't hostility. It was sheer desperation. The lead paramedic, Lewis, climbed into the ambulance. "We're headed to Central General," he announced. "Suspected premature labor, possible internal injuries." Mark nodded, attempting to compose himself. Everything had spiraled so quickly. One moment, they were just detaining a suspicious passenger. The next, it became a life-or-death crisis. Still, something nagged at him. Rex had a history of sensing danger before people did, and even now the dog refused to avert his gaze from the woman. As the ambulance doors started to close, Rex let out a deep, guttural bark and lunged forward, pulling the leash so forcefully it nearly slipped from Mark's grasp. "Rex, stop!" Mark yelled. The dog whimpered sharply, eyes locked on the woman's midsection. Lewis halted mid-step. "What's wrong with him?" Mark swallowed hard. "He's not wrong," he said quietly. "That's what worries me." Rex pressed his nose against the door just as it shut, barking again. Sharp, urgent. Then he circled the ambulance, sniffing the tires, the ground, and even the path the stretcher had left behind. He growled softly, a low, uneasy sound. Perez jogged up beside Mark. He's still on it? What's he picking up? I don't know, Mark admitted, but it's not normal. He's not reacting to fear or pain. He's tracking something. Perez frowned. Like what? Mark's eyes drifted toward the paper bag still clutched in his hand, the same one Rex had been fixated on earlier. He reached inside and retrieved the metallic patch he had spotted earlier, now faintly glinting under the harsh ambulance lights. Rex immediately barked, lunging forward with his nose twitching intensely. Mark's heart rate accelerated. There's something here, he whispered. Something familiar. Before Perez could reply, the ambulance engine roared to life. Rex howled, not in aggression but out of alarm. His instincts shouted louder than any words could. Mark watched as the flashing lights disappeared into the night and murmured under his breath, "Whatever's going on, it's far from over." Rex turned his gaze toward the fading ambulance, chest heaving with exertion. Even now he refused to relax, sensing deep down that the true threat remained undiscovered. Back inside the airport security control room, Officer Mark placed the woman's paper bag onto the stainless steel table. The echoing ambulance siren slowly faded into the distance, leaving an uneasy quiet that felt heavier than before. Rex stood beside him, tail stiff, ears pricked forward, his nose twitching toward the bag like a compass drawn to danger. Perez crossed his arms. You really think there's something inside? Mark nodded slowly. Rex doesn't react like that for no reason. The bag appeared innocent enough, slightly crumpled, smudged with fingerprints, adorned with the logo of a baby boutique across the front. Yet as Mark began to pull out the items one by one, folded baby clothes, tiny socks, a pacifier still wrapped, Rex's low growl returned ominously. The sound was deep and controlled, yet brimming with caution. Mark glanced over at him. What is it, boy? What are you picking up? Rex stepped closer, sniffing the air, before locking his gaze on a pale pink baby blanket nestled at the bottom. With care, Mark lifted the fabric, unveiling a small pouch sewn discreetly within the seam. His heart skipped a beat. Perez, grab the UV scanner, he ordered. Though Perez frowned, he complied. Under the violet illumination, a faint residue glistened along the inner stitching, a thin layer of powder catching the light. Mark's stomach churned. That's not baby powder, he whispered. Perez leaned in for a better look. Could be narcotics, he murmured. The small pouch concealed inside the blanket hardened Mark's expression. That would explain her panic, he murmured grimly. However, Rex's attention wasn't solely on the pouch. It was on her. He inspected the metallic patch discovered earlier, now resting on the table beside the blanket. It was flat, oval-shaped, and covered with a thin plastic layer. Rex let out a single, decisive bark. Perez took a cautious step back. You think she was transporting something inside her? Mark said nothing, but the chilling thought lingered. She wasn't just hiding drugs, he muttered quietly. She was carrying them. Rex growled low again, circling the table, his nose brushing over the pouch, the patch, and then toward the direction where the ambulance had departed. His posture spoke volumes. The danger hadn't passed. Mark exchanged a look with his partner, comprehension dawning slowly, like the onset of a storm. You're telling me there's more, he whispered. Rex gave a soft whimper, eyes locked on the distance. Deep inside, Mark sensed that the true breakthrough was yet to unfold within the hospital walls. The ambulance screeched abruptly as it pulled up to the emergency entrance of Central General Hospital. Sliding doors flew open swiftly and paramedics rushed the stretcher through. Female, late 20s, 7 months pregnant, experiencing severe abdominal pain, unstable pulse, one paramedic called out urgently. Medical staff poured into the hallway, wheeling the woman into an examination room without delay. Her anguished cries reverberated down the corridor, broken and desperate. Please, save my baby, she begged, gripping a paramedic's sleeve just as another intense wave of pain struck her. Moments later, Mark and Rex arrived, both gasping for breath. The officer flashed his badge. Efort K9 Unit. I need immediate updates on the patient brought in through Gate C. The nurse behind the counter nodded swiftly. Room 3, Trauma Wing. Mark broke into a quick pace down the hallway, Rex trotting anxiously at his side. There was still a faint scent lingering, a mix of airport disinfectant blended with something metallic, almost synthetic. Rex's nose twitched, his body taut with alertness. Whatever he had detected earlier remained present. Peering through the trauma room's glass window, Mark observed the medical team in action. The woman lay pale and shaking beneath the harsh white lights. Electrodes adhered to her chest, while an oxygen mask covered her face. A tall doctor with graying hair and a focused expression maneuvered a portable ultrasound probe across her distended abdomen. Mark stood waiting, his heart racing as the monitor flickered with black and white static images. A heavy silence fell. The doctor furrowed his brow, adjusting the probe with a careful hand as his eyes narrowed in concentration. "This is strange," he muttered softly. The nurse leaned forward, curiosity piqued. "What do you see?" He refrained from answering straight away. Instead, he altered the angle and pressed the device a bit firmer against the skin. The image on the screen was distorted, jagged and uneven, far from the typical smooth, rounded outline of an unborn baby. A faint metallic glint appeared inside. The doctor's expression grew serious. "This isn't normal fetal movement," he whispered. "There's something artificial present." Mark stepped into the room. "Doctor, what exactly are you saying?" he asked. The man turned to him, lowering his voice. "There's a foreign object inside the abdominal cavity. It resembles a shell casing or perhaps a part of a sealed container." Rex let out a low whine, his body tense, as if affirming the doctor's words. The nurse drew a sharp breath. "So, she's not really pregnant?" The doctor paused, then explained, "There's a structure mimicking a fetus, but it's synthetic. Hollow compartments inside. I've never encountered anything like this before." He straightened, eyes wide. "We need to alert the surgical team immediately. This has to be removed." Mark swallowed hard, his breath caught. She's carrying something inside her. That's what Rex sensed all along. Within moments, alarms blared. Nurses hurried in, wheeling the gurney toward the operating theater. The woman's head lolled weakly to one side, her eyes glassy and filled with fear. "Please," she rasped, voice trembling. "I didn't want to do this." Mark followed as far as the double doors permitted. Beyond the sterile glass, surgeons assembled around the table, their movements rapid and precise. Rex settled quietly by the door, silent now, observing intently. His breathing remained even, yet his gaze was fixed on the operating light, the spot where the truth was destined to be revealed. For the first time since the airport incident, Mark finally grasped the meaning behind the expression in his partner's eyes. Rex hadn't been on high alert due to danger. Instead, he had been desperately trying to save her before the lethal secret concealed within her took effect. Above the door, the red "Surgery in Progress" sign glowed like a glaring warning. Mark stood motionless in the hospital hallway, his hands clenched tightly as the steady tap of his boots lightly echoed across the tiled floor. Beside him, Rex remained vigilant, ears twitching with every beep coming from the monitors beyond the closed doors. Minutes turned into hours. Nurses hurried by, speaking in hushed yet urgent tones. Mark couldn't erase the image from his mind, the woman's pale face, her shaky hands clutching her abdomen. She wasn't the kind of villain he was accustomed to encountering. Alongside the fear in her eyes, there had been something else. An unmistakable guilt. At last, the door swung open. The surgeon emerged, carefully peeling off his gloves, his expression somber. "Officer Henderson," he said. Mark straightened immediately. "That's me. What did you discover?" The doctor paused, as if choosing his words with great care. "It wasn't a pregnancy," he revealed eventually. Her abdomen contained a hollow silicone structure shaped like a uterus, connected to a mechanical pump built to mimic a fetal heartbeat. Mark's stomach nodded. "So you're saying she was never pregnant?" "Not in the slightest," the doctor confirmed, his tone grim. Inside that device were multiple sealed capsules, tiny compartments layered within the artificial abdominal wall. "We discovered more than 12 concealed containers." "Containers of what?" Mark inquired, already fearing the response. The doctor shared a look with the nurse standing next to him. "Highly concentrated liquid narcotics, enough to supply an entire trafficking ring for several months." Mark lowered his gaze to the floor, his fists clenching tightly. The pieces snapped into place with harsh clarity. The costly clothing, the shaking hands, the exaggerated panic. It wasn't a coincidence. It had been planned. She was involved in a smuggling ring, Mark muttered, masquerading as pregnant to avoid full body scans. Rex must have detected the scent through the silicone barrier, the doctor confirmed with a nod. If your dog hadn't reacted when he did, she might not have survived the rupture. One of the compartments within the prosthetic had started leaking. That was the cause of her collapse. The chemical was lethal. Had it spread more, she would have died within minutes. Mark exhaled deeply and ran a hand soothingly along Rex's back. "You saved her life, buddy," he said softly. Rex met his gaze with steady eyes, tail still. The nurse stepped forward. "There's something else. She's been asking for you." Mark followed her into the recovery room. The woman lay frail on the bed, her complexion pale, but her breathing steady. As he approached, her eyes fluttered open. "I didn't want to do it," she whispered. "They promised money, said it was just medicine. But when I realized what it really was, it was too late." Tears traced down her cheeks. "They threatened my family." Mark's expression softened as he spoke. "You're fortunate to be alive." Her eyes drifted toward Rex, lying motionless near the door. "He understood," she whispered softly. "He sensed it before anyone else did." Mark gave a small nod. He always senses it first. As he left the room, his detective instincts were already assembling the next steps. This was more than just one woman's plight. It was an entire system, an intricate network that used innocence as its camouflage. Thanks to Rex, the initial link in that chain had been shattered. The reality was chilling. Yet this was merely the beginning. The morning sunlight filtered weakly through the hospital blinds. When Mark returned to the recovery room, the outside world was stirring awake. But inside, time seemed to stand still, weighed down by the heavy silence of unspoken truths. The woman rested propped up on her pillow, her face pale and her eyes rimmed red from crying. Her voice was quiet but firm when she finally spoke. "I didn't want to do it," she repeated, fingers clutching the thin blanket tightly. "They threatened to hurt my son if I refused." Mark drew up a chair and sat beside her. "You have a child?" he asked gently. She nodded, her lips trembling. "He's 6. They promised he'd be safe if I went through with carrying their package. At first I believed it was medicine, a harmless substance. But then I overheard their conversations. They were exploiting women like me, single mothers, refugees, anyone desperate enough to smuggle liquid drugs disguised as false pregnancies." Her voice broke as she continued. "They had doctors, handlers, even forged passports. I tried to back out, but then they showed me pictures of my son walking home from school. I didn't have a choice." Mark remained silent, a turbulent mix of anger and compassion swirling within him. He had witnessed criminals fabricate lies, shed tears, and plead for mercy before. But this situation was different. This was a woman ensnared in a sinister trap woven by predators who exploited vulnerability and despair. "Do you know their identities?" he asked softly. She hesitated briefly before nodding. "The leader goes by the name Victor. He operates a private courier company that transports medical supplies through major airports. I was supposed to meet one of his associates at the gate after my flight landed. I would hand over the fake pregnancy belly, receive my payment, and vanish." She swallowed uneasily. "There are others, too. More women on different flights." Mark's pulse quickened. "When?" he urged. "Today," she whispered. "2 of them are scheduled to arrive this afternoon." That snippet of information was all he needed. Within moments, Mark was communicating over his radio with Airport Command. "This is Officer Mark Henderson, K9 Unit, Code Red, suspected human trafficking in progress. Initiate full lockdown on all incoming flights from Istanbul and Madrid. Person of interest connected to a smuggling ring under the alias Victor." Several hours later, chaos unfolded once again inside the airport. But this time, the officers were prepared. As travelers flooded through customs, Rex, Mark's K9 partner, stood alert, his nose quivering, eyes scanning every single movement. Suddenly he froze.